talking about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the queen of rock and roll. All the time you talk about rock and roll, people are like, oh, Chuck Berry did that, or it's a bunch of dudes. The first person to really make rock and roll happen was a woman named Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
In 1964, on a rainy day at an abandoned railway station in Manchester, a woman stepped off a horse-drawn carriage, picked up an electric guitar, and did something that changed music history forever. But what if I told you, just a few years earlier, this same woman was shunned by the very community she came from, called a sinner, and nearly erased from music history? This is the remarkable untold story of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the forgotten godmother of rock and roll. It's 1964, and Sister Rosetta Tharpe is standing on a makeshift stage at an abandoned railway station in Manchester, England. Rain is pouring down, soaking the crowd, yet nobody moves. They're all mesmerized, staring at a woman they'd barely heard of, wielding an electric guitar like nobody had before.
Walk around in glory, tell the glad news. Look up David in the heat of the day. Tune up the harp and begin to play. I know it rain, you know it rain.
Her fingers race across the strings, blending gospel with blues and creating the blueprint for what we now call rock and roll. This unforgettable moment was secretly inspiring a generation of future British rock legends, names like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Keith Richards, who were watching closely, amazed and inspired. But here's the thing, just a decade before, Rosetta wasn't even welcome in the churches she grew up in. The gospel community had turned their backs on her, calling her music sinful, even evil. She faced relentless criticism, lost friendships, and was labeled an outcast, all for daring to blend the sacred sounds of gospel with the gritty soul of blues. So how did Sister Rosetta Tharpe, once rejected and nearly forgotten, become the unsung hero who quietly invented rock music itself? To understand that, we need to rewind to where it all began, deep in the heart of America's South, long before anyone had ever heard the term rock and roll.
She had a major impact on artists like Elvis Presley. When you
in the 50s knew of her as a superstar. And so I think it's very fair to say that there's a bit of her snuck up in all of rock and roll.
It's train, it's a clean train, it's train.
Rosetta Tharpe was born Rosetta Newbin in 1915, deep in the cotton fields of rural Arkansas. From the moment she could walk, Rosetta was immersed in music, guided by her mother, Katie Bell Newbin, a traveling evangelist and musician. Young Rosetta quickly became a local sensation, a little girl with a voice powerful enough to shake the walls of the church and fingers that danced effortlessly across guitar strings. By the age of 6, Rosetta was touring churches and revivals throughout the South. People came from miles around to see this little prodigy sing with a passion and energy they'd never witnessed before. She wasn't just performing gospel, she was feeling every word she sang, expressing joy and sorrow so vividly it moved entire congregations to tears. But as Rosetta grew older, her musical ambitions stretched beyond the walls of the church. At 23, she signed her first record deal and moved to New York City. It was here, in the bustling clubs and recording studios of Harlem, that Rosetta did something revolutionary. She took gospel songs, electrified them, and infused them with the gritty, soulful rhythms of blues.
Use that mess for my time.
It was like a bomb had dropped on gospel music when she flipped. It was like, what? You know, I can't believe that's Sister Rosetta Tharpe. She's not supposed to be singing that kind of music.
No one had ever dared mix these worlds before, and for some it was shocking. Church leaders labeled her music scandalous, accusing her of corrupting sacred hymns with the devil's rhythms. Friends she grew up with distanced themselves, and the gospel community that once embraced her now openly rejected her. Yet Rosetta refused to back down. She believed her music was bigger than labels or judgment. It was genuine, honest, and deeply spiritual, even if others didn't see it yet. Determined to stay true to herself, Rosetta doubled down. Her groundbreaking fusion of styles quickly caught on, influencing young musicians who were eager for something fresh and rebellious. She had unknowingly sparked a musical revolution. But even as she rose in popularity, Rosetta Tharpe faced another battle, one even bigger and tougher than before, because despite pioneering the sound of rock and roll, Rosetta was about to find herself nearly erased from its story altogether. By the late 1950s, Rosetta Tharpe had done the impossible. She'd broken down musical barriers, electrified gospel, and ignited the flame that would become rock and roll. But as new stars like Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and Johnny Cash rose to fame, each directly inspired by Rosetta's fearless style, the woman who sparked the revolution faded quietly into the shadows. As rock music exploded into mainstream popularity, Rosetta watched from the sidelines, overlooked and often uncredited. The music industry, quick to move on to younger, flashier performers, left her behind. Tours slowed down, audiences shrank, and money became scarce. Rosetta, the visionary whose brilliance had paved the way, was left struggling to make ends meet.
Here she is jamming with Duke Ellington at the piano and Cab Calloway on the right.
I can't sit down because I just got to heaven and I can't sit down.
In less than 5 years, she had established herself in a tough, male-dominated industry, singing the songs she chose to sing in her own distinctive way.
Who's that yonder dressed in white? I just got to heaven.
She was rich, she was famous, and she was loved by her fans. She was gospel's first superstar.
Yet, even as fame slipped away, Rosetta never stopped performing. Her music remained authentic, powerful, and unapologetically her own. Then, in 1964, when it seemed the world had forgotten her, she received a surprise invitation to tour Europe. She jumped at the chance, unaware she was about to create the defining moment of her career. That rainy day at the abandoned railway station in Manchester changed everything. Her electrifying performance, broadcast across Britain, sparked a hidden fire. Young British musicians, soon to become global rock icons, watched in awe, captivated by her power and raw talent. Without knowing it, Rosetta had just reignited her legacy. Decades later, long after her death in 1973, the world finally woke up to Rosetta Tharpe's genius. In 2018, nearly 50 years after she played her last note, Rosetta was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, recognized at last as the true godmother of rock and roll. Rosetta Tharpe never lived to see the full impact of her influence, but her story remains a powerful reminder. The greatest legends aren't always the ones who shout loudest, but the ones who quietly change the world, leaving echoes that last forever. Today, Sister Rosetta Tharpe is finally getting the recognition she always deserved, but never got to see. Musicians, historians, and fans alike now celebrate her as a visionary who changed music history forever. Artists from Bob Dylan to Beyoncé openly acknowledge her as a major influence, and her fiery guitar solos and passionate vocals continue to inspire generations. Yet, beyond the groundbreaking music and overdue accolades, Rosetta's story leaves us with something even deeper, a lesson in courage, authenticity, and perseverance. She dared to blend styles, defy expectations, and remain unapologetically herself, even when the whole world seemed against her. In the end, Rosetta Tharpe's legacy isn't just about creating rock and roll, it's about standing firm in who you are, even when people criticize or reject you. It's about leaving a mark so powerful, people can't help but remember, even if it takes decades. So the next time you hear the electrifying riff of a guitar or feel chills from the raw emotion of a song, remember Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the forgotten legend who quietly shaped the music we love today.